The chair that changed everything. Have you ever wondered what it takes for someone to snap? What invisible thread finally breaks when pulled too tight? I used to think I knew the answer. I was wrong. My name is Lyra, and 3 years ago, I thought success would be my salvation. Standing in my Chicago office at 22, watching the city lights twinkle below, I believed I had finally escaped the shadow of my childhood. The $1 million advertising contract I'd just secured felt like armor against old wounds, but some scars run deeper than money can heal. The call came on a Tuesday. Mom's voice, strained and unfamiliar. "Lyra, honey, we'd love to have you home for Thanksgiving." There was something underneath her words, something she wasn't saying. After 3 years of minimal contact, why now? Why the sudden warmth? I should have questioned it more. Instead, I booked a first-class ticket. The house looked smaller than I remembered, its paint peeling in places I'd never noticed as a child. When I was 8, sitting on that kitchen stool while everyone else got the real chairs, I thought it was normal. Children adapt to their designated spaces, don't they? But at 22, successful and independent, surely things would be different. Mom hugged me with the enthusiasm of someone greeting a distant acquaintance. "Look at you, all professional," she said, her eyes already drifting toward the kitchen where my sister Amanda was orchestrating dinner preparations. Amanda barely looked up from her cooking. "Perfect timing, Lyra. I could use help with the kids." 5-year-old twins who treated the house like their personal playground, screaming and running while their mother issued half-hearted warnings that meant nothing. My brother David emerged from the basement, oil-stained and grinning. "The prodigal daughter returns. Hannah, come meet my little sister, the one who made it big in the city." His wife Hannah offered a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was newer to this family dynamic, still figuring out where everyone fit. Only my sister Rachel acknowledged my success with anything resembling interest, though her nurse's uniform suggested she'd come straight from a double shift. "Chicago treating you well?" she asked, but her tone carried an edge I couldn't place. I'd brought gifts, expensive ones. An iPad for Mom, gaming systems for the kids, luxury items I'd carefully selected to show them I'd made it. The responses were lukewarm at best. "Oh, how thoughtful," Mom said, setting the iPad aside like it might bite her. Amanda muttered something about spoiling children with technology. Only David and Hannah seemed genuinely grateful. Dinner was served for 7 people at a table set for 6. "Where should I sit?" I asked, scanning the perfectly arranged place settings. Rachel shrugged. "The kids are eating in the living room. Grab that stool from the kitchen." The stool. The same wooden stool from my childhood, now even more obvious in its inadequacy among the adult chairs. I was 22 years old, a successful professional, and they expected me to perch on a child's seat like nothing had changed. But I did it. God help me, I did it without protest. Conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. Amanda discussed her volunteer work with the school board, earning nods of approval. Rachel talked about saving lives at the hospital, receiving admiring comments. David shared updates about his construction business, with Mom beaming proudly. When I tried to contribute, mentioning the campaign that had brought manufacturing jobs back to Ohio, the response was polite but distant. "That's nice, dear," Mom said before immediately turning to ask Amanda about her book club. Something was wrong. This wasn't just the old family dynamic of me being the afterthought. There was an undercurrent I couldn't identify, shared glances between my siblings that excluded me entirely. After dinner, as I helped clear dishes, I overheard Amanda and Rachel in hushed conversation by the sink. "I can't believe she doesn't know," Amanda whispered. "Should we tell her?" "Tell me what?" I asked, approaching with an armload of plates. They exchanged a look. "Nothing important," Rachel said quickly. "Just family stuff." Family stuff I wasn't part of, apparently. The weekend passed in a blur of similar moments. Conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, phone calls that were taken in private. David and Hannah seemed uncomfortable, like they were watching something unfair happen but didn't know how to address it. The tension reached its peak on Sunday morning when I offered to take everyone out to brunch, my treat. "That's really not necessary," Mom said firmly. "We're perfectly capable of providing for ourselves." "I know that," I said. "I just wanted to do something nice." Amanda laughed, but it wasn't a kind sound. "Always trying to buy your way in, aren't you?" The comment hit like a slap. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," she said, but her eyes said otherwise. "Just an observation." I excused myself and called my best friend Chloe from the privacy of my old bedroom. "They're acting weird," I told her. "Like they're all in on some secret I don't know about." "Maybe you should ask directly," Chloe suggested. "Sometimes the direct approach works best." So I did. That evening, as everyone gathered in the living room, I took a breath and asked, "Is there something going on that I should know about? Everyone's been acting strange all weekend." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, David cleared his throat. "Lyra, we didn't want to burden you with family problems." "What family problems?" Another silence. Mom's face had gone pale. "The house," Rachel said finally. Mom had to sell it 2 years ago. She's been renting it back from the new owners. The world tilted. What? David continued reluctantly. Her medical bills from the surgery, they piled up. She couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to deny it. Instead, she stared at her hands. I didn't want you to worry, she whispered. How have you been managing the rent? I asked, though some part of me was beginning to understand. No one answered. The truth hit me like a physical blow. The money, I said slowly. The automatic payments I set up when you said you needed help with utilities. That wasn't for utilities. Mom's face crumpled. I was going to tell you. When? When were you going to tell me I've been paying your rent for 2 years? My voice was rising, but I couldn't stop it. When were you going to tell me you've been lying to me? Amanda stood up defensively. She didn't lie, she just didn't explain everything. She told me the money was for groceries and electric bills. I've been sending $1,200 a month thinking I was helping with utilities. The number hung in the air. Even David looked shocked. 1,200? Rachel repeated. Every month? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You didn't even know, did you? None of you knew how much I was sending. I looked around the room. What did you think, that I was just helping out with a few bills here and there? David's car insurance, which I'd been covering for 8 months. Mom's groceries, which had somehow expanded to include household expenses I'd never questioned. The internet bill that had mysteriously tripled, but which I'd paid without complaint. $28,000, I said, doing the math out loud. In 2 years, I've sent you $28,000, and you've all been sitting here acting like I'm some selfish daughter who abandoned her family. The silence was deafening. Hannah, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. I think maybe we should all take a step back. But I was past the point of stepping back. Something had shifted inside me, a gear clicking into place that changed everything. You want to know why I really moved to Chicago? I asked. It wasn't for the career opportunities. It was because every time I came home, I felt like that 8-year-old girl sitting on a stool, trying to reach a table where she'd never really have a place. I pulled out my phone. But you know what? I'm done trying to buy my way to that table. Mom's eyes widened as she realized what I was doing. Lyra, please, we can talk about this. We are talking about it, I said, dialing customer service. For the first time, we're actually talking about it. The automated system connected me to a representative. Hi, this is Lyra Morrison. I need to cancel some automatic payments effective immediately. Amanda grabbed for my phone, but I stepped back. Lyra, don't do this. Do what? Stop paying for a house that isn't mine? Stop supporting adults who can't be honest with me? I rattled off the account numbers I'd memorized, canceling payment after payment while my family watched in horror. The rent payment for 1247 Maple Street, $1,200 monthly. The grocery allowance for Martha Morrison, $400 monthly. The car insurance for David Morrison, $150 monthly. David had gone white. I can't afford that insurance on my own. Then you'll figure it out, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Like adults do. Mom was crying now, but I couldn't let that stop me. I wanted to help because I love you all. But love without respect isn't love. It's just enabling dysfunction. I looked around the room one final time. I'll be at my hotel if anyone wants to have an honest conversation about where we go from here. But I won't be bankrolling secrets anymore. The drive to the hotel was a blur of tears and rage and something that might have been relief. For the first time in my adult life, I'd set a boundary and held it. My phone rang constantly that night. First Mom, crying and apologizing. Then Amanda, angry and accusatory. Rachel called to tell me I was being dramatic. David was the only one who seemed to understand what had really happened. I'm sorry, he said simply. I should have spoken up sooner. It wasn't right, what they were doing. Who was doing? I asked. Mom and Amanda, mainly. They've been... I don't know how to say this without sounding terrible. Say it anyway, he sighed. They've been calling you their insurance policy behind your back, like you owed them something because you were successful. Amanda kept saying you had plenty of money, so what was the big deal? And Mom, she just went along with it because it was easier than facing the truth about her situation. The betrayal cut deep, but it also clarified things. And Rachel? Rachel knew about the rent. She thought you knew too. We all thought you knew what you were really paying for. After David hung up, I sat in that hotel room and cried for the little girl who'd spent her childhood trying to earn love that should have been freely given. But I also felt something I hadn't experienced in years, pride in myself. The next morning, I checked out early and drove back to Chicago. I didn't say goodbye. 6 months passed before Mom called again. Her voice was different, smaller somehow. The landlord is selling the house, she said. We have 60 days to find somewhere else to live. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. Amanda thinks we should ask you to co-sign for a mortgage. Help us buy a place. The old me would have been calculating loan terms before she finished the sentence. The new me simply said, number. No? No, Mom. I won't be co-signing anything, but I will help you find resources for housing assistance, and I'll drive down to help you pack when the time comes, if you want me to." There was a long pause. "I think I'd like that." The real conversation happened 3 weeks later, when I returned to help them move. Mom had found a small apartment she could afford on her own, with some assistance from a local program for seniors. Amanda had gotten a part-time job to help with her family's expenses. David had taken on extra construction work to cover his insurance. We were packing boxes in the kitchen when Mom stopped and looked at the old wooden stool, still tucked in its corner. "I never realized," she said quietly. "Realized what?" "How many meals you ate sitting on that thing, how many times we made you feel like less than your siblings." She picked up the stool, examining it as if seeing it for the first time. A grown woman, sitting on a child's stool because we couldn't be bothered to make room at our table. I felt tears threatening, but they weren't the bitter tears of the past. "It wasn't about the stool, Mom." "Yes, it was," she said firmly. "It was exactly about the stool. It was about all of it." She looked at me with clear eyes for the first time in years. "I turned my daughter into my bank account because it was easier than being a parent." The apology I'd waited for my whole life came in pieces over the following months. Not grand gestures, but small acknowledgments. Amanda eventually admitted she'd been jealous of my success and had convinced herself I owed the family something in return. Rachel confessed she'd been afraid that supporting me would somehow diminish her own accomplishments. The hardest part wasn't forgiving them. It was learning to forgive myself for accepting so little for so long. A year later, I was invited to David's birthday party. When I arrived, there were 8 chairs around the dining table. Real chairs, all the same height. Mom had bought a new set specifically for the occasion. "That one's yours," she said, pointing to the chair closest to her right side. "If you want it." I sat down, finally taking my place at a table where I was wanted, not just tolerated. The conversation included me naturally, asking about my work without reducing it to dollar signs, inquiring about my life because they cared about me as a person. As we were clearing dishes after dinner, Amanda approached me hesitantly. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, "about earning love versus just receiving it." "Yeah?" "I think I spent so many years competing with you that I forgot we were supposed to be on the same side." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm sorry it took losing your financial support for us to see your worth as a sister. The transformation wasn't complete or perfect. Families don't heal overnight from decades of dysfunction. But it was real, and it was ours. The wooden stool still exists, tucked away in Mom's apartment storage closet. Sometimes I think about it when I'm facing difficult decisions, remembering the little girl who accepted whatever scraps of love she was offered. That girl taught me resilience, but she also taught me to settle for less than I deserved. Now when I visit, I sit in my chair at the table, surrounded by people who know my value and treat me accordingly. The difference isn't just in the furniture. It's in the fundamental understanding that love isn't something you buy or earn through sacrifice. Real love makes room for you exactly as you are. The question I asked at the beginning was wrong. It's not about what makes someone snap. It's about what makes someone finally understand they were worth so much more than they were accepting. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family isn't money or endless patience. Sometimes it's teaching them how to treat you with the respect you should have demanded all along. That Thanksgiving dinner changed everything, not because I lost my temper, but because I finally found my voice. The chair was never really about the chair. It was about claiming my place in a family that had forgotten I belonged there, and once I claimed it, once I insisted on it, they remembered too. Some boundaries are drawn with words. Others require walking away until people understand what they stand to lose. But the strongest boundaries are the ones that come from finally knowing, deep in your bones, that you deserve better. When you know that, really know it, everything else falls into place. The girl on the stool grew up. She learned to demand a chair at the table, and when she finally got one, it was worth the wait.